All right, welcome back to Daybreak. We quite didn't take a break. We've been still discussing that very controversial matter about the Division of Revenue Bill. And Governor Ali Roba from Mandera, one of the contentious issues that has been raised by the Leader of Majority, Aden Duale, is the question about the on-source revenue. And I want to just take a look at Mandera County's budget for 2018-19 financial year. The budget was 13.71 billion shillings. The recurrent expenditure allocated was 6.63 billion shillings, meaning 48.4% of recurrent expenditure. Of the budget was to go to recurrent. For development, we had set a higher figure of 7.08 billion, which is 51.6%. Then in terms of revenues, we were hoping that we would get an allocation from the county government, from the national government, of 10.14 billion shillings. Total grants, conditional grants, was supposed to be 877 million. On-source revenue was supposed to be 169.59 million shillings. Then, by the 9th month, that is 3 quarters of the year, you had collected 66.63 million shillings against a target of 169%. You had spent 4.82 billion shillings on total expenditure, on recurrent expenditure, and 2.83 billion shillings on development, showing that in as much as we had targeted to spend more on development, you're actually spending less when it comes to actual workings. So I want you to respond to that. Why is that? And then number two, your on-source revenue doesn't appear to be doing very well. By 3 quarters, we should have done about 127 billion shillings. If we are just to take the simple average, what's the challenge?
Very good question. One, I think picking on Mandera, you've picked on the perfect example. and what I want to say is that they are, first in terms of, development expenditure, we strive because of the state of underdevelopment to put more resources into development and less in recurrent expenditure in our region, generally. However, there are variables outside our control. For example, if you've been carrying in the news, there has been quarry ban, in the county that is, outside our control for almost a year plus. And we've been fighting to get that issue lifted. And as such, that has affected construction industry as a whole. And that has affected also revenue performance, to the extent that, for example, we were not, the operation of quarry means that we are able to collect cess on quarry and sandstones and gravel and construction issues that were supposed to be vibrant in terms of what we need to collect. So maybe looking at a specific issue, and there are other variables. Mandera County Council was one of the richest in the days of when Somalia was stable because of the border business. And my brother Mheshimiwa Kenan is a key stakeholder in Mandera also, and so he understands what I'm trying to discuss. The closure of the border has made collection of revenues next to impossible for us, because the key drivers of the economy is cross-border trade, and the issue, and that is what we have. The third issue, which is realistic, is the challenges of spillover security issues originating from Somalia. And as such, we are not able to attract external investment, which is the drivers of most of this revenue collection. So only the locals are doing business with themselves and in a bit enclosed, environment because of the perceived insecurity originating from issues of terror. And as such, many businesses that would have ordinarily thrived for us to be able to collect what we need to collect is not, collectible on the basis of this. And that is, we work very hard and try our best, but largely variables beyond the control of the county governments is what creates for us a challenge as it is. But it's not a permanent situation. We are very optimistic at some point in time when Somalia stabilizes, interventions from our government within the country in terms of securitization issues work out. The vibrancy, the border is open, vibrancy of revenue performance is going to return back in terms of trade. And that's what we have. And we trade largely with our neighbors. And then that is what drives, the market and the products in that area.
And so with this reality that we don't have a division of revenue bill, how far are you in planning for the financial year 2019-2020?
What happens to those projects?
Well, we, of course, in effect, my interpretation, and that is strictly from the way Constitution is written, is that the enactment of appropriation bill is an illegality that has created government shutdown. If the law is strictly followed as written, and this is my view, the control of budgets will not be able to approve fund requests for national government in the current state of issues, because the basis of all this discussion, which is DORA, has not been enacted.
Right.
And that's why we seek interpretation from the Supreme Court in order to make sure that we do that. As we do that, based on our numbers of the previous financial year, of course, the instrument of planning is continuous. It starts in September, up to when we prepare. But we've prepared our budgets and submitted, and we've requested the assemblies to stand by as we get DORA issue sorted out.
Senator, I'm coming to you in just a minute. Very quickly, Governors, now that we are specifically on Mandera, would you mind responding to that answer by the viewer about the 700 jobs that you've cancelled for the youth?
Well, it's very important that I respond to that, actually. We've advertised, because Mandera, by default, and the situation I just discussed, we're the only employer. The county government is the only employer because of lack of private sector investment. So the rate of unemployment is very high. So we try to project numbers. That would have costed us 600 million. We advertised and recruited. More than 5,500 applicants applied. We were only able to take 700. Now the 700 we took, more than 4,500 who did not succeed were calling it not fair, it's biased, is this, and that resulted in the invitation of EACC to come and investigate. EACC in effect recommended suspension of the recruitment as they look into the issue.
And so it has nothing to do with the availability of funds or not?
We went ahead because we are, as a political government, if the popularity of the government is dented as a result of what is perceived not fair, then we have no other cause but to cancel and restart the process.
Senator, everyone on this table and beyond wants counties to thrive, but at the end of the day, why haven't we not? Counties have become, sorry to say, holes for looting, for public money, and we've seen it from scandal to scandal. So why are we also not seeing the House coming with a solution on this as well? Because even though tomorrow more money is given, more scandals continue. Why are we not seeing a permanent solution on this? Why are we not seeing it as loud as we are hearing this issue of money?
Well, Zizi, I've laid on the table of the House a report from my committee. It's called a Fiduciary Risks Report. I think I saw one of the newspapers mention it over the weekend, which looks at the performance of county governments for the first 3 years of devolution, 13-14, 14-15, and 15-16. And we have looked at some of the risks, we have looked at some of the instances where public funds were misapplied, and we have made certain recommendations. On source revenue, to be fair to Governor Roba, we have assessed the sources of revenue for counties. Nairobi, that generates about 10 billion Kenya shillings per year. That money comes from parking fees, it comes from property rates, it comes from permits, and it comes from things that you can only do in a thriving economy. Many of our counties, the 47 counties, they were created on the basis of district borders. There was not great economic thought put into it. And I think that's why some people feel that we need to merge and bring this into regional, at a regional level so that there can be greater economic sense. So the contribution of on-source revenue to counties' budgets does not even get to 10%, or in some areas like Turkana gets 10 billion Kenya shillings every year from Treasury, but only collects 100 million. So that's just about 1% of on-source revenue contribution to the budget. Secondly, we had previously talked about the governors going to court. And I think they have a right to go to court, because that is where you go to when you want to seek clarity on issues that have not been properly laid out. But we have been saying in Parliament, and I believe there is a bill that is in the works now on alternative dispute resolution. It does not make a lot of sense for government bodies to be suing each other. I will take it quite unkindly as the chair of the Public Accounts Committee in the Senate, that the money that we are sending to counties is coming back to the COG for COG to take the government to court.
Right.
It is a misapplication of public funds. There are various ways through which we can resolve conflicts, and those routes are contained in the Intergovernmental Relations Act. We've got IBEC, we've got Summit, which is supposed to meet at least twice a year. I think we need to reframe it and say that it shall be mandatory for Summit to meet before the budget process is concluded, so that we get an agreement at the level of the heads of government. However, whatever is agreed on at IBEC or Summit must still come back to the houses, because budget making comes back to Parliament. And finally, when you go to court, you will realize that President Kenyatta committed a similar illegality in the previous financial year. I am on record, and you can check the Hansard. We raised this issue in the Senate, but it was days before the handshake, and so we were dismissed as people who are salivating at power, which we had lost in the last elections. We have allowed that illegality to happen, and I think it is now that we shed off the opposition tags that people are taking us much more seriously. It is not the first time for the president to do this, and I think the president also needs to come up and show his commitment to devolution and his support for prosperity of counties.
All right, and of course he can argue that he'll be guided by the institutions that are responsible to doing this. I'll come to you, but you're going to go today?
Yes, and I want to...
What time?
I think there are 47 governors, so we will meet them wherever they are. I just want to respond.
I hear you meeting at KCC, then you walk.
No, the final word is by Dr. Kenan. You have an opportunity to speak about other things. So with all that, starved counties, financially that is, the divide within the House, the mediation process hasn't worked. The division of revenue bill, there's no indications that it will be retabled as it were. So then what? What do we do? How do we get out of this?
Thank you. I think first of all we are paying the price for having a very reformist constitution. We are seeing the true application or misapplication of this constitution. What I don't agree, it's not fair to blame the president for our own legislative failures, because the president is not part of parliament. He just comes in towards the tail end. If there are issues between the two houses, I just want to persuade my good friend here, let's not suck in the president in our own failures. The president comes in. If there are issues between the Senate and the National Assembly, let's resolve them, and I agree for those who are right now touting for the alternative dispute resolution mechanism, those are our own things that we need to handle them at the level of the parliamentarians. Let's not suck in the president. That's one, because the president's role is clearly defined in the constitution.
Right.
Equally, I do agree with him on the issue of Western resources. First of all, I think there's something that needs to come out. Kenya is not a banana republic. The issue of the dwindling of our own sources of revenue is going to have a major impact. Because the national government is there as a national coordinator for the 47 counties. If revenues are not generated, then where will the national government get the resources to fund devolution? So these are things that there's a very fine line which all the devolved units must also accept and improve. Nairobi is our powerhouse, is our economic powerhouse. If the revenues fall, then meaning the national government will also have that deficit. Governor Mandera and all the other governors are also expected to do the same and seal all the loopholes that will contribute to, or that has contributed to the renewal of the resources that they ought to be generated at the county level. Because really at the end of the day, we have one country with one system, with one economic system, and therefore all the different units must contribute to the national well-being. And that is the national resource basket. If one group is not working, the other group also doesn't add the same to the national well-being.
All right, Dr. Kenan, of course, there's that very whole conversation you've had at the Senate. I believe it's your committee of senators complaining that the money collected at source is not always banked with the National Treasury. We're back in a moment to talk about the final topic of the morning, and that is to do with what the Parliamentary Service Commission is saying, that they want more
money
returns for the members of Parliament. They do quite a very important job, and they should be treated just like other state officers. Back in a moment.